Hello, my name's Alexander White, and today I wanted to show you a real-world problem that you get sometimes on a track that I'm just about to mix. This track is unmixed at the moment, and as I was bringing up the faders, there was one particular track where I heard a problem that I, occasionally encounter, and it's something that is one of the more common problems you'll encounter in a mix, generally speaking, when dealing with acoustic drums especially. So I'm going to play the track, have a listen, and then I'll show you what the real problem that jumped out at me immediately is. So here's the track, unmixed so far. All right, so what I'm going to do is now solo the snare drum, because that's where the problem actually is. So here's the snare, and have a listen, and then I'll tell you what the actual trouble is. So here's the snare. You can hear that boom, boom of a low resonance every single time that snare hits. Now let's listen to it again in the track, because you know what's so funny is when you put it into the track, the problem seems a lot less. It's almost something you think, I can probably live with that actually. Once everything's mixed, and it might disappear. But because it is so prominent, especially when you listen to it in solo, we don't want it causing us trouble later when we've done compression or any of the other special effects we might do that might bring that problem out even more. So let's have another listen in the track. All right. So let's fix this. So first of all, I find when I'm dealing with drums, especially for resonances, using a meter is really, really easy. It's a great way to solve these problems. So what I've got over here is my little SSL meter. What's so cool about this one is it's not even especially detailed. You can get much more detailed meters than this, but this seems to work fine. So I just keep it sat on my main mix bus, and I just go and check it every time I have a problem like this. So I'm going to hit play with the snare in solo, and we'll have a look on the meter and see if any of the kind of more low end peaks are jumping out too much. So here we go, and we're just going to watch and see what happens. The one that I've highlighted, which is 160 Hertz, is the frequency which seems to be really loud in that area. Sometimes it's not the right answer first time. It might be something around or adjacent or even further up, but it's a great start. So let's have another listen and just watch that little meter bouncing around. You can see it's poking out just a bit more than anything else. Okay, so with drums, because they tend to be quite a static sound, as opposed to, say, an acoustic guitar which changes pitch a lot, which can make something like this in an acoustic guitar more tricky, because it does happen in acoustic guitars occasionally. One note you'll find seems to go whoom more than others. But in drums, because it's static, it means we can just kind of treat this problem quite simply, or at least the first step in treating this problem is just to get an EQ and just notch out that particular frequency. So let's jump over to our snare track here, move up here, and I'm going to get a really simple EQ. So there's nothing to this one really. It's clean, it's precise. I use it all the time for this kind of thing. This is just the Universal Audio Precision channel strip. So what I'm going to do is pop down here. I'm going to enter 160. And I'm actually going to move it on here because apparently that didn't work. So there we go. Okay, 160. So over here, this is how tight the actual curve is. So whether it's kind of around this direction over to the left, it will be more like that. As I bring it round this way, the curve gets tighter and more narrow. So I want something fairly narrow because I kind of just want to affect that frequency, not too much around it. I sometimes don't make it completely, because of course I could go up as high as it goes before it literally turns into a high pass. But what I actually want to do is get something a little bit wider, because sometimes the really narrow cuts I find actually don't work as well. You need to kind of affect some frequencies around it. But you know what, every single time that you do something like this, you do need to listen and just make your own decision about how wide or narrow that cut is going to be. So start somewhere around here first of all. So let's have a listen to the snare and let's turn this control down. I'm actually going to use my control surface here just to turn this up and down because it's a little bit easier than keyboard and mouse. So let's have a little listen and see if we reduce the problem a bit. So here we go. So the problem was somewhat reduced. Of course, the snare drum's sounding now quite a lot thinner. It doesn't seem to have as much bass in it. That's a problem that we need to try and fix. But first of all, let's focus a bit more in on this. Now let's try this being a bit more narrow and see if that changes anything at all. So here we go. Okay, it's okay, but maybe this isn't quite the right frequency. Because the meter we used is fairly broad, it might be up a little higher. So let's just try taking this up to 165 and see how that sounds. So I'll return this here and then we'll just try the same process. Here we go, having a listen. Maybe even up just another couple of hertz. Let's try 167. Let's try really narrow, see how that works. Okay, let's play it. So really narrowing it down, I think actually starts to bring the problem back a little bit. You can hear it creeping in from the sides of that frequency cut. So let's just quickly pull this back, probably somewhere here, I think. Now you're always going to hear it a little bit. We can't really completely remove it without doing something like sample replacing the entire snare drum, but we don't want to do that. And if you remember, in the context of the mix, it wasn't all that bad. We might even be able to get away with it, but we want to make sure that we're doing the very best we possibly can for the track. So let's see now how that sounds in and out of the mix. I'm just very quickly going to experiment with the volume of the cut here for a second. Somewhere around 11 decibels seems to be a nice balance where it doesn't quite thin it out too much, but I think we've really reduced the ring in that snare drum. So let's now put it back into the track and see how it sounds in the track. And we'll switch this on and off so we can hear the effect that we've had so far. So I think without a doubt you can hear that the ring has gone, and when you bring the ring back in by bypassing the plug-in, you do notice that it's kind of kind of suddenly your attention's really drawn to it, and oh, actually that is a bit of a problem. But of course, one of the issues is now the snare doesn't sound so thick because we've cut a massive amount out of it. Well, there's a really simple fix for this, and that's that we're just going to use this SSL channel plugin, and we're just going to use the low shelf on it. So that means that, you know, there's your frequency range, and you've got little notches or bell curve boosts that you can make. A shelf just raises something up, you know, very much like a shelf. So whoop, whoop, like that. So let's just solo the snare again, and let's find a place to raise the low end generally, so to bring back some of that low end. Although we will raise the sound of our ring, we are also bringing everything else up, so it sort of compensates for the loss. So let's have a listen. And I'm going to work with these two together just to see if I can really find the result that I want. Okay, I'm just going to widen this up a bit more, this little control here, which is how much of that area we're cutting out. Okay, and remember, the thing we're aiming for is not to completely remove it. If you need to do that, you need to start doing sample replacements. What we're trying to do is just make it not a problem in the context of the track. So let's now have a quick listen to what we've done so far. So let's just play it, and I will take both of the plugins off as we listen. One thing I notice is that it's a bit quieter, so let's level compensate for that. So let's just bring up the channel strip volume a little bit. In solo. Okay, I'll bring that down a little bit because it's maybe just a touch loud. Let's try again. So the real key is how does it sound in the track. The snare's a little thinner, but of course it always will be because we've had to take some of that frequency out. Let's see how it works in the mix. Okay, now let's bring it back in without any of the processing. Again, with everything. And now I'll just do a very quick without and then with as it's playing back. So here we go. Sorry, without first. So no processing, and then I'll bring the processing in. So actually, in the context of the mix, we lose that ring, it doesn't sound so tubby and so unpleasant, and actually sounds quite a lot more exciting. So one more time, just for that A-B comparison, without it first. That's really cool. That works great. That's a great start. Now, as the mix progresses, you might go back and you might tweak the frequencies of the cut. You might change the width, and that all just depends. You know, nothing in sound engineering is a one-hit thing and you never revisit it. You revisit things throughout the mix. But that is an excellent start and a wonderful way of solving that sort of problem. And that applies to any sound at all. If you are working with an acoustic guitar, for example, although that can be challenging because, of course, if you have a resonance on one note and you cut that out, okay, sure, we've done that. But now the problem is that the guitar obviously changes pitch and that resonance then isn't there anymore on some other notes. But you've kind of cut on everything. That's a great time to use a dynamic EQ, which is something I might show at some point in a future video of how you can use a dynamic EQ just to cut something when it's in. It's of limited benefit with something like a snare drum, which is generally a fixed pitch every single time it plays. You can pretty much use a static EQ to solve that problem. So please do like and subscribe because it really helps. It, of course, makes me able to continue to make cool, fun videos and share all these little sound engineering tips and tricks. But I hope this has been helpful. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll see you on a video very soon.